Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. So why did we do Let Artists Be Artists? So when COVID hit, we decided to continue working, and we were able to rechannel all of our programming budget into working with artists and communities, and our funders were brilliantly supportive of all of that. We were also able to take advantage of some of the furlough scheme, but only a small portion, about 3 people in our organisation at that time were PAYE. And we realised really, really quickly that the artists that are the lifeblood of the work that we do were not going to have the advantages that us as PAYE staff were having. And so Christina Poulsen, who was our executive director at that point, said, can't we just employ artists? And at that point, we started to develop the Let Artists Be Artists scheme. We went into it head first. We literally had no idea what we were doing, but we knew that we wanted to employ artists and keep them connected with communities. And so we limped our way through the first year of Let Artists Be Artists, working with a brilliant collective of other organisations in the Southwest that believed it was a thing that they could help support. And so we were able to employ 3 artists for that first year. It became a really important part of what Strike a Light wanted to deliver, and we made a pledge to ourselves that we would continue to support and employ artists as the ongoing core part of Strike a Light. And so we have. Oh, could everybody put themselves on mute? That would be massively helpful. Thanks so much. And so we are now in our second round of Let Artists Be Artists. And we brilliantly have 4 artists that have joined us for the next 2.5 years.
Oh, would everyone mind putting their put themselves on mute unless they're going to talk? That'd be great. Alongside that, deciding to run this scheme, we also came up with, I don't think it's revolutionary at all, just a way of working, and that seemed to really fit alongside what we were trying to do with Let Artists Be Artists. So I have just put a link into the chat into our 7 ingredients and of how we try and work. And a key part of that is doing things over a longer period of time, investing in artists and amplifying underrepresented voices. So that sort of became a backdrop to how we wanted to work with Let Artists Be Artists. I think that's enough about that. Can you pull up? Yeah.
Just briefly want to say that it was a very artist-centred approach from the beginning, because we knew we weren't skilled in how to employ artists, and we needed to understand what the right conditions were. So we worked with artists to formulate Let Artists Be Artists. We went through some processes with artists that we paid and sat alongside the other organisations that were supporting us financially to make this happen. So from the start, we were consulting with artists about how to do this. And we tried to create a new recruitment process that would hopefully alleviate some of the difficulties in accessing employment. We had no idea that it was going to be as popular as it was. And 400 artists applied for the first round, and we had to whittle that down to 3. So however the process was that we designed, we know that there were flaws within it. And so we again worked with artists to try and tailor the process of application for this second round. Again, we had about 300 artists make an application, and we know that we again have not created the perfect application process. I'm not sure that it exists, but we are really open to listening to people that have gone through this process to try and make it better. The whole point of this scheme was to make life easier and better for artists, and to try and show that artists should be valued in the same way that administrators, as artistic directors, as general managers should be. So we are on a journey with Let Artists Be Artists, and we have by no means cracked it. We don't have a blueprint, and we will continue to make some mistakes as we go. But the relationship that we have with the artists that we have now employed is one of trust, and one that is centred around discussion. And we hope there is a generosity behind the project that means we can continue to have discussions about how we can do better.
Thank you, Emma Jane. Flo, I wonder if you, as our first cohort, just would like to talk a little bit about how it was and what it meant and maybe what it enabled.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. Yeah, how it was like, yeah, it was incredible. It was like an absolute dream. I don't know, I kind of sort of applied, like obviously thinking I wouldn't get it because I thought, oh, it's going to be so competitive. It was in a time like I was I don't know how I can carry on like trying to work in theatre and trying to be an artist. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And it really like afforded me the time to be able to do that. I always said this, like when we were talking about it, I do fundamentally believe that it changes who can be an artist and who's allowed to work like in the arts. And things like Let Artists Be Artists just shift. They make it less elitist and less full of like privileged people and people that come from money and have that security that they can fall back on, which I didn't have. I'd spent a long time knocking down doors, trying to like break in and just just being met with closed doors like a lot of the time. I was really frustrated around like representation in the arts. And it felt like a long time like it wasn't for me. And meeting Strike a Light and connecting with them, I was like, wow, they're doing like what the kind of work I want to be doing. And they're making work happen in places where there's not much happening, which has always been like what I've cared about. I don't know, I guess in like kind of basic terms, I'd written one play, which is called Destiny, and it allowed me to take that show out into the world. We couldn't get funding because those forms are impossible, like for me to be able to navigate. So the scheme allowed me to do that. It allowed me to keep my sanity and not like just kind of fall apart in that time of taking a piece of work that was really personal out and about. And I had like a Strike a Light support and had them like cheerleading me, championing me. While I was there, I then got approached by the National Theatre, by Public Acts, their like community program, and I got commissioned to write an episode of The Odyssey. And I know like that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for doing Let Artists Be Artists. And I wouldn't have had the confidence to kind of go into that space and speak to those people. So in terms of scale, like I'd literally, all I'd written was like not saying all, because that's a hard thing to do, but I'd written a 1-person show, and it allowed me to really to give me the confidence, belief, space, time to dream, like how can I want to make shows that are big as well. And it gave me the space to do that, which I was allowed to then got to do that working on the Odyssey with the National. We're working on a new project with Strike a Light and GL4, their sister organisation, called Blinded by Your Grace, which again is really, really big in terms of scale. And we're also working with the Bristol Old Vic and Trowbridge Town Hall on that. So I'm really interested in how, I think, wherever you are in the country, in the world, you should have access to art, and to art that you connect with and that is good quality, and everyone should be able to get involved in that. So it allowed me to really think about that stuff and to put that into practice and build momentum in my career. I'll stop going on a rant. Yeah, sorry.
So it wasn't a rant. Florence, I was really interested. One of the things that we had said really clearly at the beginning of the Let Artists Be Artists process was that there was no predetermined outcomes. We were really clear that we weren't employing artists to make us something, that we weren't employing artists to deliver a set amount of workshops, and that the measure of success was never going to be the amount of output. Florence, I'm interested. We know from running that year that a year wasn't long enough, but there were also other things that felt tricky and difficult. And that idea of no predetermined outcomes, how did that land with you and how did that feel?
Yeah, at the start, I just couldn't really get my head around it. Yeah, it felt like, because it was so alien and unusual. So I I remember us chatting, like EJ and Sarah, like I felt like, oh, I got to be like delivering all the time and like coming to you every week being like, this is what I've done, you know, like this is what I've achieved, give me a gold star, tip, whatever. Because I think I'd been, and I think often a lot of artists are used to, like being people looking over your shoulder, like if you're being funded, if you're given money, people want to know like what you're doing all the time, where that money's going, how they're spending it. And you need like time and space to breathe and think and, you know, work at different paces as an artist, I think, for me. And yeah, it really, really allowed me to do that.
Cool.
And I felt like really trusted, like, yes.
We set the parameters for paying those artists in the same way that we would be paying the rest of our staff. So they were salaried, and it was 30k pro rata, and it felt important that they had and now have the new cohort, all the benefits that we as PAYE employees have. So, you know, access to holiday pay, sick pay, Christmas parties, staff meetings. So really being an embedded part of our team, but it's really important through this process that they are not delivering for Striker Light. They are still their own artists. And that is some of where the sort of friction and the rub comes when you're piloting work like this, in that there isn't a size that fits. You know, trying to develop a job description and contract for our 4 new artists who are all completely different, working in completely different ways in different art forms. We're having to try and produce something that is generic, but that gives them some sense of security. So again, a lot of conversation about, you know, how we do this, and listening to artists about where we could change things to make it easier or better. If we quickly just talk about where we're at now with the new round of NPO.
Yeah, so we got an uplift in our latest NPO, and it was entirely to fund Let Artists Be Artists, and also a programme called Gloucester Presents, which is employing specifically Gloucester community producers and residents and artists to create work in their own communities. So when we approached Let Artists Be Artists this time, we did want to make it a little bit more streamlined, and we wanted to invite artists to think about what benefit they would bring to Gloucester. And we spoke about our 7-step recipe. So it feels to me like it's that tricky thing. There are no predetermined outcomes, but we wanted artists who would commit to being in Gloucester for some of their time and doing some work in Gloucester. We didn't want to know what that work was, and even now, the artists are going to talk in a moment, we don't need to know what that was, but we wanted to know that their practice was socially engaged, I guess, that it fitted in with our ethos, and that they were able to commit time to being in Gloucester and working or meeting some of our communities, all communities of their choice. That was important.
One of the questions that came up in the chat was about where artists are located in the process that we went through to make those selections. It was rigorous. It didn't just involve Striker Light, so there were also artists on the both reading and selection and interview panel. There were organisations who also went through that process with us, and we were able to send out all of the criteria, the questions, to artists in advance. I'm going to get Sarah to put in the chat in a moment all of the back reading around Let Artists Be Artists and how we made those selections. But the question was, why are there no Gloucester-based artists currently employed? Each of the artists that we are working with have had some kind of connection with Gloucester. Viv is has worked extensively in Gloucestershire over the time that we have known Viv. Jamal is a university graduate from Gloucestershire University. So it felt important that we were able to be providing some kind of link back to the city. We were really aware during this project that we were never going to please everybody, and there will be people that are disappointed that there are not Gloucester specific artists in this cohort. Some did make an application, not a huge amount, but there were some applications, and we had to go for the best fit, the right people who were going to be able to carry this forward and who could work to our ethos and to our 7 ingredients. So we were not dismissive. We carefully considered those artists that were going to come on this 2.5-year journey with us. And they're not the last. There will be another cohort.
And just to jump in, I think the work that we're doing around Gloucester Presents is also, I hope, offering quite a lot of opportunity and employment for locally based artists. There's some brilliant questions coming in, and we have got some time at the end to ask questions. But what I'd like to do is for us to hand over to each of our current cohort of artists, and just for them to talk a little bit about their practice, actually.
Can we just introduce Viv, who's joined us late, but Viv is our 4th artist. Viv, it might be worth you introducing yourself and then just giving us your 2-minute spiel.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Viv, is that 2 in at the deep end? We can pass over.
Could you pass over just so because I didn't know I was supposed to do 2 minutes.
Yeah, grounding. Viv, introduce yourself.
I'm Viv Gordon. I'm a child sex abuse survivor, artist, activist, and all of my work is a creative campaign for increased access and inclusion in the arts and voice, visibility, community and leadership by, for and with child sex abuse survivors aged 14+. That's me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Viv. Ed, would you be up first, sort of starting and talking us through a little bit about you and being on this scheme?
I can do that. Yeah, hi. So yeah, I am not from Gloucester, and was really mindful about that in the application. But anyway, I'm going to lose all my time and ramble about stuff that is totally irrelevant. Really feeling the weight of being chosen for this, and like knowing that 8,000 million people applied and 20,000 million people deserve it, right? So I'm shitting myself, but I make theatre for adults but dressed up as children's shows. Really, they're kind of for parents. I make punk rock and I make videos, and when I'm on this business for 2.5 years in Gloucester, I'm going to be working with school communities, so primary schools to start with, getting children to reimagine how economics works in a performance style, and then getting hopefully wider school communities, so teachers, parents, carers, dinner staff, everyone, people who walk past the school, people who live in that community, hopefully, to talk about utopia and how human beings survive on this planet 300,000 years into the future and what that might be like. So kind of trying to come up with some utopian ideas and make some performance out of that, but also hoping that in this time of being employed and not having this kind of reinventing the wheel kind of worry about forever trying to pay the rent, pay the mortgage, stay alive, that I might be able to afford to do some of those things that you never get the chance to do. So developing some writing, putting out songs that I never do, that you also, those things that are on the back burner that you never get a chance to do. Maybe I've got a chance to set them on fire now. So really happy to light that up. So yeah, music, performance, children, primary schools, theatre, punk rock.
Cool. Thank you, Ed. Do you want to pass on over Jamal?
Yes, Jamal. Here he is. Woo! Give it up.
He's slung me in. I like it. No, man. Thanks, Ed. I think similar to position to Ed, you know, there's a lot of weight that kind of comes on. Obviously, we've only been doing it for a few weeks and applying what our practice is. But yeah, my name's Jamal O'Driscoll. I am predominantly a dance artist that works with a variety of different art forms, but more specifically to that, I work through the dance style of breaking, or some people refer to break dance. Not the correct term, but I use the tool of breaking to create conversations, share new voices in different spaces, if that be outdoor, indoor, or site specific. And this kind of opportunity is massive, you know. Obviously, someone that gets it's someone 2.5 years to work as an artist and look at the methods. It's a massive privilege, and then you want to be really precious of that time and be able to do it properly. As mentioned, I did go to university in Gloucestershire. I was kind of tied down with the community in terms of hip hop and breaking, working with like Your Next Move and things like that. And actually kind of started my interest and my peak into theatre. Striker Light actually was the one that pulled me to work with organizations like Ace Dance and Music, and inspired my initial journey for someone who wasn't accepted in the arts world and didn't think it was something for me. And then carried on that journey, going back from Birmingham, and stayed on that thread. And 10 years later, fortunately, I'm still here, still working, still figuring it out, and being able to develop my practice. And I think for this opportunity, it's not only just the work that I can do, but I can also look at my practice, developing methods of working, concepts. That's what I'm more focused on. And how do I work with the community? How do I work with partners and things like that? And the important thing at the moment, that's mainly what I've been doing, is having conversations with existing relationships and new relationships to figure out ways that we're not kind of just dropping in and dropping out. I hated that kind of feeling, especially when you do projects wherever you might go, is that you might do 2 weeks or 6 weeks and then you gotta go. So how can I work in Gloucestershire? And I live in south of Birmingham, so not that far from Gloucestershire, to be able to actually build connections that once I go, maybe there's a legacy and things move on. And actually through reconnecting, I've already kind of found that there's already been connections of the small little pieces of work that have continued, and how can it continue to be a part of that. On the second side is my actual practice. Still trying to figure out how breaking in its purity can still fit in many spaces and be respected and have its own movement language and tell narrative and tell different stories of voices and people that are othered sometimes in ways. So that's currently the journey I'm on. And I guess this is just a call to everyone that is in this space, if you are in Gloucestershire or outside Gloucestershire, that does want to have a conversation, especially at this stage, you're welcome to contact myself to have them conversations. And I know you're saying that, you know, a big part of it, you're talking about Gloucestershire and things like that, if there's artists there, to work with that and see what's possible. So I'm here to serve, also share what the process is.
Oh, thanks, Jamal. Tida?
Hello, my name is Tida. I am based in London. I am an anti-disciplinary artist. I like the artsy ways, anti-disciplinary. I really enjoy working in different spaces and bringing them together. And it's really hard to define, which is where sometimes I feel like I'm unable to then get funding, because the ideas I have and the ambitions are not, there's no like clear mark scheme. But anyway, we'll go into that another time. Formerly, I am a theatre director and sound designer. A lot of my work is based on interactive theatre, participation, experiences that kind of provide audiences the tools to communicate and tell their own stories through art, especially if they're not really interested in theatre and art. I'm very much interested in process as opposed to product. So what are we doing with the audience? How are we engaging to create something? What is a non-conventional rehearsal room? How do we break against things we know to build something different? I like plays, but that most of my work is based on the transformational value, and the collaboration and engagement and what that does to communities and audiences. Even like if I am producing or directing or sound designing a piece of theatre, it's less about telling a story, but how we with the audience build the story in real time, interactive work, not just going, oh, here's a survey and then your answer is yes, but no, how do we challenge the audiences in the space to create with us? So that's basically a painting of me. And I feel like already with Let Artists Be Artists, there's kind of like the mental side and then the practical side. So I think mentally it's allowed me some space, and it's just the beginning. So, you know, there's a lot of crazy things to happen, but to dream, to play, to afford to say no. There's a lot of instances where I have been doing jobs because I gotta pay the bills, which, you know, as we all know. But this, you know, there's been moments at the beginning of this year where I'm like, you know what, actually, I don't need to be in this space where they maybe not want me for my art, but maybe need to tick other boxes, blah, blah, blah. So I can say no to that and focus on other things and find other things, because there is a level of support from that. It also allows me to be ambitious, but also not limited. I remember my first session with Strike a Light, and for me it was sort of like creative therapy, like what's in my head, let's be open and honest and let's figure out ways to get there, which is very hard to do with other organizations because of the outcomes that are, you know, that you have to get to. So you're kind of afraid of saying something that doesn't take that outcome, and then you feel like they're going to judge you or say, get out of here. So that was something I found interesting and super important. And then also the bigger thing is there's hierarchy in the arts and theatre. So there's, you know, a lot of importance towards things that make money, as opposed, which, you know, I get it, we live in capitalism, as opposed to things that really support people and humans and tell stories and play and really allow artists to be artists and, you know, do things. So I feel like what we're doing with Strike a Light and Let Artists Be Artists is shifting that, or the start of that shift, and saying, okay, what you do is important, and it doesn't matter where it sits within the scheme of things. Because yeah, I don't know if I'm making sense. I feel like my brain just went somewhere, but that those beginning conversations have been useful for me. And that's where I'm at. I'm just looking down on my paper to see if there's anything I missed, because my brain is ridiculous. Yeah, I think that's, yeah.
Thank you, Tida. Viv, do you feel like you're happy to add some stuff?
I'm ready. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank you, Viv. Thanks, Tida.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm super excited, obviously, to be doing this. The thing for me, one of the big things for me is that in my work, we have really massive buy-in from the sexual violence sector. You know, as the keynote speaker at the Rape Crisis England and Wales conference this year and things like that, they're totally on board, but the arts sector is not on board. So to have a art sector partner working alongside me in my mission to create cultural space for CSA survivors is absolutely huge for me and for my work, and someone championing the work and helping us work out how to make space in the arts for us. There's 11 million adult survivors of child sexual abuse in the UK, with currently no cultural offer. In Gloucester City, that is an estimated sort of 22,000 adults who are CSA survivors who currently have no cultural offer. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing alongside my own artistic practice, which I'll talk about in a moment, is about sort of thinking about how to change that in Gloucester, that opportunity to do some place-based durational work, to bring together the cultural organisations with the sexual violence services and link those up. I had an amazing meeting with Gloucester Rape Crisis last week, who had never heard of Strike a Light, which I find incredible, and an exciting opportunity to start making those links and thinking about the intersectional communities that Strike a Light serve and how those could be linked up with support services, but also how we create that sort of cultural community of belonging as well for very isolated CSA survivors. Most of us are very isolated. And then in terms of my own artistic practice, there's that incredible opportunity, you know, like I've got no problem thinking about how I'm going to fill this time, because I have a million ideas that it takes, the whole funding cycle takes so long to sort of manifest anything, that just to be able to get on with stuff is really exciting. I'm excited about occupying space. We're looking at taking on an empty shop and putting in, I've got a show and installation called Cutting Out that we want to occupy a shop in Gloucester with that show and that installation, and do participatory work and other stuff, open mics, that sort of stuff in that space. And we're also building a big outdoor show called Restless that Strike Light have actually been involved in the R&D stages of. So that's really exciting to take that forward together. And then the other thing that I'm interested in that I haven't been able to start yet is that because we lack cultural representation as a community, there's no sort of creative response to like news stories and things like that. So this week, there was the launch of the Rochdale grooming gang report. Absolutely no artistic response to that. Last October, there was the October before, sorry, there was the Truth Project report, a 7-year independent inquiry into CSA. The report launched, absolutely no cultural response to that. And that just, I find that shocking when it's something that impacts so many of us. So it's those sorts of things that I want to start to be able to, on this sort of having this flexible, movable time, to be able to go, okay, that's coming up. How can we build some sort of cultural response? Yeah, I think that's all I want to say.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. There's quite a few questions popping up, and I thought, Lynn, before we go over to you, it might be just useful for me to say some of the things that we do and we don't do at Strike a Light. So the artists are on a salary, 30k pro rata for 2.5 years. The first round was only 1 year, and the loud and clear feedback that we got from the artists and that we felt within the organisation was that a year just wasn't long enough. So our 4 artists are now going to be working with us for 2.5 years, which feels really positive. We are not their producers. We're very clear about that. We are not going to produce these artist pieces of work. However, we will be here to help network them, to advocate for them, and to, wherever we can, build networks across the industry, but also quite firmly here in the city of Gloucester. They don't have budget. There's a small Go See budget, and they get £1,000 commission to use in match for funding applications, but that is it. The Arts Council are aware that they will be using their salaries as match for any application that they may be putting in, and we will be talking with the artists about how best we can support them to articulate that within funding applications, and they can select when they take that commissioning money across those 2.5 years. It's such a tiny amount. It really is a tiny amount, but it's the gesture that we could afford within the programme. We were really inspired around conversations about universal basic income, and we were also really inspired around conversations for an NPA, a national portfolio of artists. And so we hope that this programme is going to provide some evidence base that if you give artists funding and let them be artists, the outcomes will be extraordinary, nothing that we could have planned or imagined, and that we should be able to trust them to manage their time and to come up with brilliant ideas. That does lead to a big question and a big problem about how do you evaluate this? When there are no set KPIs, how do we evaluate and evidence this whole programme? And that is something that we are still working through. As I said at the beginning, there is no blueprint for us to follow about how to do this. And so we are literally trialing by error. And we are in consultation with the artists to understand how best we can extract from them the good information and the outcomes that have been positive and negative for them. But at the same time, we cannot layer upon them the expectation that they will evaluate this project because we are employing them just to be artists. So there are very weird balancing tightropes that we are walking across to try and get the best outcome for both the artist and to try and create a shift in the industry.
I think if we, again, look back at our way of working, it is about investing in artists and putting in time. And we're interested in long-term relationships with our communities and our artists. And so the fact that Flo is here today, we are still in regular contact with our artists from the first cohort, and hope to continue developing those relationships. You know, this is not a one-night stand. This is definitely a much longer term thing. And I think the evaluation will come through that. I think, you know, Flo being here today and talking about what it's enabled her to do, those things will build. And obviously we won't be able to take, that won't all be because of the Let Artists Be Artists, but I think we can all see that by just, artists are vocational. People are artists because they're vocational. I don't often encourage people to go into the arts because it's really badly paid. It's not a great future, but actually this feels like a little glimmer of hope. And we know that if you're an artist, you can't stop thinking about work. You want to make it. And what we believe in is, we've just been talking this morning at the Rotary Club, and we believe in how arts changes lives, how it improves people's health, how it gives people new skills, it makes them more employable, how in Gloucester the arts is making people proud of being in Gloucester. And then all of the work that all these artists are talking about creates a shift that is sometimes a quite magical shift. We call it other, and it's often around social impact. And so also when we're thinking about the artists that we wanted to employ, those things were important. How were they going to help us improve people's physical and emotional health? How was it going to increase that pride of place? How were we going to be supporting new skills and employability and that magical other? And I think if you've heard the 4 artists talking about how they work, it's really clear that that social change and that magical other is really implicit within that. Cool, thanks.
We're going to keep the questions coming through in that chat, but Lynn, we'd really like to hand over to you to get some of your reflections on like, why did you mention this in your Instagram post? Yeah, over to you, Lynn.
I guess the reason for me about mentioning it is because most artists are freelancers. We know that over 90% of theatre projects cannot be made without the input of those freelancers. But yet what has happened is that really since the early 2000s, we have seen arts organisations grow substantially in the number of people that they employ, but the people they are employing are not artists. They are people working in other areas within that organisation, often doing absolutely crucial work, but nonetheless, the people without whom these organisations cannot make art are the people who are the bottom of the pile. And I guess the pandemic, what happened with furlough, and about who did and didn't get it in the arts, also actually how particular organisations treated some people who were contracted to them at the point when the pandemic came, sometimes extremely well, sometimes very poorly. I think have made this, along with discussion about universal basic income, an issue that really needs exploring. And I kind of feel, you know, I'm not an expert in this at all, but I'm kind of inspired today when I, you know, hear people talking about the opportunity to dream, to play, to afford to say no, to be ambitious, about the fact how it affects their own kind of mental health and therefore their ability to make a difference through the art they make with communities and other people. And I just kind of think that if Strike a Light, which is a pretty small MPO, is able to do this, well, then why can't every MPO in the country?
Thanks, Lynn. I think I'm excited to see where we are in a year, and this feels like it's a prototype, and part of what we want to do is encourage other organisations and also to talk to funders to say this is the no predetermined outcomes, and putting artists, particularly in communities, is going to shift things. It's going to shift things in ways that we can't imagine. And, you know, we are talking to a load of artists here and organisations. We know the value of what we do, and it's sometimes really hard to talk
Yeah.
about. But yeah, hopefully this is going to cause a bit of a butterfly ripple effect, and we can convince other people to think about it as well.
Can I just say, I think like the autonomy is really, really crucial. It's like to be trusted to do what I do, and I do it really well. And to be trusted to do that is really great, because I've worked on, as I'm sure all of us have, and as all freelancers have, on so many projects designed by people who aren't doing the work, delivering really quite stupid projects. Not always, but often quite stupid projects designed by people who don't know the communities that they're serving. And so for me, that autonomy is really, and that ability to flex and learn, reflect and learn as I go, just feels like really amazing to have that.
Someone's just popped in the chat and asked us, what do ACE think about it? Well, ACE are endorsing the project because they gave us the uplift to specifically pay for this project. So that was money directly in and straight back out of Strike a Light. The uplift was literally to pay for the artist fees. So they are on board, and I hope that they are already shouting, I hope, about let artists be artists in their networks. But I think at the end of this, what we're hoping is that we have been able to talk more widely about the scheme. So Sarah and I are going out and talking about let artists be artists at every opportunity that we can. We hope that we are going to be able to help influence other organisations to take what they perceive as the risk of doing let artists be artists, but it isn't a risk at all.
It's not a risk, but it is expensive. I'm absolutely confident that there is no risk. We could have employed 30 artists, actually. There were so many brilliant artists that employed. It was not an easy decision, and we're thrilled with the artists that we're working with. But it is expensive, and we wanted to make sure that we did it well. We paid artists all the way through to help us get to where we were, and we really want to do this well. So, but I am convinced that the outcomes that happen, I think that Gloucester will be a changed place in ways that we cannot possibly imagine in 2.5 years' time, and that is where the evaluation will be gold.
One of the questions in the chat is, as artists, do you think a national portfolio of artists is a good idea? And it might be too early or difficult or personal or individual to answer that question, but do any of you from the scheme have any comments on what an NPA might feel like?
I feel a bit like there's some progressive countries in the world where they do this kind of thing. And I hear about this as a kind of urban myth. I don't know for sure, but maybe in Norway, maybe in Japan, they pay artists to just make stuff. In France, right, you can get paid just to make the stuff, yeah, and you don't have to sort of beg for it, and you don't have to sort of show it off and be ticked off, and it could go wrong. You know, you're allowed to go wrong. Oh, what a dream! So, yeah, I think it's absolutely fundamentally amazing, and it would be brilliant across the board for everyone. Yeah, get involved. Totally.
I just want to answer a few questions. I love the question, should artists employ organisations? I think that we are moving towards a model at Strike a Light where we are, in a sense, trying to imagine that we're employed by our communities. And so as artistic directors, we have really taken a step back, and we've had to leave our ego at the door. And that for me means less producing shows that I'm excited by. For EJ, it means less programming. Actually, what we are seeing is way more exciting audiences coming to see the things that we're doing and being involved in the making of those and working with lots of artists. And that feels like the shift. I think this money is precious. We are living in a real cost of living crisis. And I feel that I can stand up high and say, the money that we are given is in service to our communities, and we are trying to do that as much as we can.
Someone asked in the chat if like LABA is like trademarked and could it roll out. I think we're really excited about the possibility of LABA rolling out, and would definitely want to have conversations with other organisations that want to do that. Part of the work that is in our business plan is called This Is How We Do It, and it is about us going out and talking about the work that we deliver and how we deliver it, warts and all, to try and help other organisations take some of our practice and mould it and shape it to fit themselves. And I think, you know, the more organisations, like Lynn says, that are employing artists, the better. So we're really up for those conversations, and a national network would be dead sexy. Thank you, everybody that has joined the conversation. The scheme is going on. If you want to contact us, please do. We're really interested in talking further, so let us know if you want us anywhere. Yeah, just watch this space, really.
Yeah.
And a massive thank you to the artists for being here, for making the applications, for trusting that this could be something that's good. And good on you, Flo. Keep going. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Lynn. Massively appreciate your time. Join our mailing list. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.